Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Shir over here. Thank you all for coming. Last week, we began diving and entering into the world of Rav Kook. We began learning a section in Orot called Zeronim, the first keta, the first piece, lesson Aleph called Tzimaon Le'el Chai, longing, thirsting for the God of life. How many of us thirst for the God of life? How much does our soul thirst? Rav Kook is explaining the pain the soul faces when it doesn't get what it needs. The soul comes from on high. It wants the Avir Eloki, and inevitably we can't receive that because God is way beyond. God is way beyond everything. This causes us pain. This causes us lack of peace of mind, feeling like we're getting thrown from wave to wave in the oceans of life. And we ended last week that the place of our resting, the place where we truly feel at home, is only in what Rav Kook called the Rak Be'elokim, the Ava Elokim, the godly air. And today, we're going to develop this further, and Rav Kook is going to explain, everyone, that there's an inherent paradox that leads to our existential pain. There's an inherent contradiction that the soul feels. Welcome, there's plenty of room, please take a seat. There's an inherent paradox that the soul feels, and it's built like this by design. So many of us feel pain, so many of us feel the pain of the soul, and we wonder, what's wrong with me? Why is it that I feel this way? Am I normal? How come my soul, introducing today's topic, and we all wonder, why is it that my soul feels so much pain? What's wrong with me? Is it my psychopathology? Is it my psychological history? Is it my upbringing? Is it all the traumas that I've went through? So why is it that my soul feels so much pain? And we tend to think of this. Welcome, there's plenty of room. Please take a seat. We have sheets up here. Please don't sit too far. Here, we have sheets over here also. Right? So we tend to think it's due to our own lacking why we experience so much pain in life. But Rav Kook's explaining, as we're going to see deeper, that there's really an inherent contradiction built into the human experience. And what's that contradiction? Our soul comes from on high. Our soul wants infinity. But we can't perceive infinity, right? So the pain that we experience in life, we think it's because of this trauma and that trauma and all the different things that happen to us. But really, that's not it. It has nothing to do with that. Because there's an inherent contradiction that we experience in this world, existential pain, the pain of being a human, the pain of being a person. It's the rules of creation that we all experience pain. It's built that way by design. And Rav Kook, in his way, this is what I love about Rav Kook. He's gonna take this to the next level. So we're on the second paragraph. For those who have the sheets here, you have it. Aval, you see the last line is Makam Menuchaseinu Rak Be'elokim. So this next paragraph starts with Aval. So he's going to explain this paradox again, like we're saying. Why is it that we experience so much pain in this world? Aval ha'Elohim halo lemala mikol hametziot. Isn't God above all existence? Asher yuchal ikanis b'kirbeinu mimenu eze regesh v'rayonhu. That it's possible in order for us to enter into our feelings and our desires, even a little bit of that. And anything that's more beyond our senses, our ability to comprehend. Something that's beyond human perceptions, our ability to sense, our ability to feel, our ability to really take into the heart is considered like nothing, right? God is, right? And with nothing, the mind will not rest. And I want to explain what this means exactly, right? And the Leshem explains, as we mentioned last week, the Rav Kook learned by the Leshem, who was deeply influenced. We see the synthesis of Rav Kook, how he took from everywhere, he blended it. The Leshem explains in the beginning of Hagdamus L'Sharim, the Leshem explains that something very basic to Judaism that we all seem to overlook. We can't understand God, full stop, right? He brings from the Rambam, he goes with the Rambam's idea of shlila. Shlila means negative, inverse, means there's a negative identity, right? We can't say what Hashem is, we could only say what Hashem is not, right? And that's what the Rambam explains. That's, welcome. Please join, take a seat, right? The Rambam explains that we can't understand God, right? At all. And it's funny because in our vernacular, we say, oh, why does God do this? Why does God do that? Why does God do all these different things? And the answer is, we have no clue. We can't understand God for the life of us, right? And in the Mekubalim, in the Leshem, he makes a chiluk, and this is very fundamental to the Arizal, that there's Hashem's Giluyim and there's Hashem's Etzem. Hashem's essence is something we cannot understand, but the way he reveals himself in the world, that we could try to understand, right? And even the Leshem goes as far to say, which is really amazing, the Leshem, right, we call Hashem's light the Ein Sof, unlimited, there's no limits, infinite. The Leshem goes so far to say, and this is one of the chidushim of the Leshem, that Hashem only reveals himself in a light called Ein Sof for us to be able to say that Hashem is Ein Sof, infinity, unlimited. But that's only a gilui, a revelation, in one way Hashem chooses to reveal himself. Meaning to say, even to say that Hashem is Ein Sof is only because Hashem is choosing to reveal himself as a gilui, as a revelation called unlimited. Right? It's not that Hashem is unlimited, right? Because Hashem is shlila. Hashem is beyond human comprehension, as Rav Kook is explaining. And the only way we could even say that he's unlimited is because Hashem chooses to reveal his light in the Or Ein Sof, in a light of unlimitedness, in a way that we can now say Hashem's Or Ein Sof, right? Because Hashem is so far beyond that. So Rav Kook is saying, right, because Hashem is so far beyond, of course we can't understand Hashem. Of course the soul is always going to experience the pain of being a human and living in this world. Because Hashem is so far beyond. So he's setting up the ultimate paradox. Our soul only feels comfortable when it's close to God, but the soul can't understand God, right? It's like the same thing comes up with free choice. Why? Like Hashem created a question that we could understand that there's a question and know that we can't understand the answer, right? Like Hashem creates everything at every moment, but yet we all have free choice, right? We could understand that there's a paradox there. We could also understand that we can't understand the answer. So Hashem created something that we could understand and know that we can't understand the answer, right? It's the limitations of our minds, right? So it's the same thing here. The soul wants so much, but yet we're never going to get that fill in the way that we want. Okay. Yimtsa'u al pi rov Talmidei Chachamim. We'll add one more point onto this before we move forward, right? Which is like, this will save us from so much shame. This will save us from so much negative thinking and cognitive distortions that we have. Because so many times I see in my practice, and I even beyond my practice, I see it myself, we're always like, oh, like Hashem's punishing me again, or Hashem is doing this, Hashem hates me, Hashem doesn't love me, Hashem rejected me, right? And we use hashgacha pratis in a way to damage ourselves and cause ourselves more shame and run ourselves down and make ourselves upset and cause ourselves embarrassment because we think we know why Hashem does things, right? The answer is, we got no clue why Hashem does things, right? So all the cognitive distortions that we tell ourselves and all the lines that we tell ourselves, they're ein d'efes, not true. Bogus, as Trump would say. It's fake news. Totally fake news.
Does that apply for positivity also?
Well, it definitely helps to be more positive, but ultimately, like we don't know why Hashem does things. Rav Kook is gonna try to resolve this, Stira. He's gonna try to take an attempt at this paradox as we read further. But look what this leads to. Okay, Yimtza'u al pi rov talmidei chachamim mevakshei Elokim yageim v'ayefim beruach. Therefore, it comes out that most talmidei chachamim, the people that want God the most, they're worn out and tired in their spirits, right? Because it's the talmidei chachamim that it's they don't want necessarily a bereka. They're not chasing after hanas olam hazeh, the pleasures of this world. Those are the people that their soul wants the most. And when their soul wants the most, the true mivakshay Hashem, right? So what happens is they get burnt out, right? So this is Rav Kook saying, the rov talmidei chachamim, most talmidei chachamim, because of this paragraph, they end up just totally exhausted because they're chasing some elusive goal. And these are the people that their tzimaon, their desire, their yearning for God is the most, right? How many of the most holiest souls, the highest souls, are just completely burnt out, right? As we were saying last week, the disassociation, the pain, the disappointment, the letdown, right? A person starts off with a ratzon. I want to do everything. I want to be an Eved Hashem. I want to accomplish my goals. I want to come to my authentic self, right? I want to face myself in real, honest ways and have a meaningful, close relationship with God. And then life kicks in, right? You try this, you try that, and it doesn't all seem to add up. So you're like, oh man, this is really hard, right? So it comes out that the people that want the most, and what Rav Kook is calling that over here, the rov talmidei chachamim, most talmidei chachamim, they wind up just burnt out, right? I hate to say it, but certain places in Eretz Yisrael, you drive and everyone just looks worn out. They're just like rubbed out, worn out, like the vitality, the life, like where is that? And Rav Kook is coming to address this, right? Because he was in the new Yishuv. He was with the Zionists and he was with the new Chevra and he was looking at the old Yishuv and he's like, why is everyone worn out? Like, what's going on here, right? The new Yishuv, the new generation, is filled with awe, filled with light, wanting to accomplish, wanting to do, wanting to drive, right? But the old Yishuv, Rav Kook is looking at them and he's responding and he's saying, why is everyone worn out? What's going on here? Everyone just looks rubbed out, like, like a dystopia, everyone's walking like this, What's going on here? But of course, he means also for our generation when everyone feels this way also, right? Homa, when the soul, homa, longs, right? I like to call it, it's the homie. The soul is the homie, it's your brother. What's up, homie? Right? Kishanashama homa, right? When the soul is longing, or hayoser bahir, for the light that is the most clear. It's not filled with just a little bit of light. It's not just the soul wants so much. It's not satisfied with the light that's found with righteousness and also in good deeds. And the soul just doesn't get satisfied with the truth that's found in learnings that are even extra clear. V'lo b'hayofi, and not just in beauty, afilu chezionos hayoser mufarim, even with visions that are the most splendid. Az misnavel ha'olam be'eineha. Then the world becomes misnavel. It becomes low. It becomes uncombed. It becomes unkept, like the word menuvel, in the person's eyes, right? All day long, we're doing mitzvahs. Do this mitzvah, this chesed, go to this seder, go to that shir, go to this and that. But it's not enough. It's not enough, right? Rav Kook is saying, the soul wants so much. It's not just satisfied, okay, I did a mitzvah, okay, I did this, okay, I did that, right? It's not just, doesn't satisfy, so I'll go to shir, I'll go to this program and that program, and this morning seder and that morning seder. Does the soul really ever filled? It's like we're fumbling in the dark, right? And then you get really disappointed. Right, there's a mashal that from the Pshisker, I'm totally going to mess this mashal up, but there's a mashal from the Pshisker that the Rav Simcha Baram Pshisker used to say that there are two people in a prison and the lights are out. There are no lights in this prison. There's no windows, but they get served food and they have two forks. And there's two guys, we'll call them Shmuley and Chaim, made up names, right? So Shmuley is fumbling in the dark trying to eat with the fork, and he keeps saying, Chaim, can you help me? Like maybe you could, support the plate, maybe you could do something. I know we can't see in here, but if we support each other, it would really, really help. That's what Shmuley tells Chaim, right? Shmuley tells Chaim that. And Chaim's just not paying attention. He's in his own world. He's just doing, he's there tucked away in the corner. And finally, Shmuley turns to Chaim and says, why aren't you helping me? Why aren't you helping me? He gets annoyed. He gets irritated. To which Chaim responds, you don't understand what I'm doing. You're fumbling in the dark. But on the other side of this wall, there's the sun. And I'm trying to use my fork in order to peel away at the rocks to let in a little ray of light. And if there's a little ray of light, we could all see. In the same way, we're fumbling through mitzvos. We're fumbling through shir. We're fumbling through our limudim. But on the other side of that wall, there's a light, right? There's a light. And if we let in that light, the light of God, it illuminates the whole picture. So we're fumbling in the dark like the two people in prison trying to find our way, getting frustrated. Why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? Nothing I do seems to satisfy me, right? There's a bigger light. There's a light of God. And not receiving that light and fumbling in the dark leads the world to be disgusting to us. He kol kach masrevach bekirbo, right? This feeling of disdainment, of unhappiness, of bitterness, of despondency, it spreads so much within ourselves. Until the entire world, both physical and spiritual, in all its revelations, both physical and spiritual, nidmela, it appears to him, lebe aksa. That word lebe aksa means to vomit. It appears to the individual like they want to vomit. The aviro nasala mechanak. And then the world becomes suffocating, like chonek, means to suffocate, right? A person wants so much and he doesn't get it. Then what happens? Religion becomes suffocating. A person feels strangled by religion, right? I'm doing this, I'm running to minyan, I'm doing this mitzvah, I'm doing that mitzvah, I'm doing this chesed, I'm going to that shir, I'm doing this thing, that thing, right? And it doesn't work, and then a person feels suffocated, right? How many people feel that they're being strangled by religion, right? Because we forgot about the thing, God, right? We don't want religion, we want God. Hey mivakshin mahu lamala mekocham, right? So where a person is asking for more than their ability, mashahu leumasam ayin, to what their eyes is nothing. Ulhepech ayin liyesh ein yecholet gam beratzon leratzot, right? And the opposite is true, right? Going from ayin to yesh, from nothing to something, ein yecholet gam beratzon leratzot. That is impossible for us to do. Al ken yechalesh lepamim koach haratzon, therefore at times weakens the strength of our desire. V'chol oz hachayim ba'anashim, and all the strength of life and in a man. Asher drishat elokim hi magamasam hapinimi, and all the strength of life and within people that are searching out God becomes this inner target, this inner goal. Right? This is amazing. I love how Rav Kook explains this and articulates this, that we find ourselves, the whole world, we feel strangled. A person could feel strangled by Judaism and that's what he's saying, like the higher the soul, the more the person feels disillusioned, right? The higher the longing, the more tzimaon a person has, the more pain that a person experiences. Now, I want to read you this. We're going to take a quick detour for a second, okay? We're going to read a little bit over here. From, this is called, I'll show you this. They actually recently translated Chadarov. You can see on camera over here. This is Chadarov. This is a new translation of Rav Kook's diaries. And it's really amazing what they did, how they translate this stuff. It loses its sense in English, but it's good if you need it, you know? And really, all of Rav Kook's writings, almost all of them, were his diaries. Rav Kook wrote very, very little to be published. And he would just free flow, like his consciousness, down on a canvas, on a piece of paper. And they still have, from what I understand, thousands of pages in handwriting of Rav Kook that have been unpublished, unlooked at, unedited. And Rav Kook's two main Talmidim, he had three main Talmidim, Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap, known as the Mei Marom, and the Charlap family, their Ben Achar Ben from Charlaps. He had Rav David Cohn, known as the Nazir. He was an amazing person. The Nazir, he compiled Orot HaKodesh, which is 4 volumes. And then you had Rav Kook's son, Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, who compiled Orot. So Rav Kook wrote very little actually to be published, but his students, mostly Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook and the Nazir, Rav David Cohn, took it to be compiled and malakate and sifted through, and they each pulled out different aspects of this great individual. So here is from Rav Kook's diary. I want to read you how much Rav Kook longed. I have the printing over here for those, you can see the printing for those who need it, okay? And it's just the first ketta, the first paragraph, and this is Rav Kook's inner world. You see how Imamish was reflecting this. First paragraph. Mitochi, from my innards, mitoch ma'ayane, from my wellsprings, my inner wellsprings. Yeah, see. Hineni tzarech tamid likachat et ha'otzrot hagenuzim. From my innermost being, I constantly need to take from the treasures that are buried away. Tamid ani kashur, I am constantly connected, be'oso hatzar hakodesh, with that particular holy pain, shel drishus hashlemas elyona, from searching out perfection above. V'zu enu mitmalet, ve'enu tzricha lihitmalot. And this pain that I feel from yearning to seek out God, it never gets filled, nor ve'enu tzricha lihitmalot, nor does it need to be filled. This pain, this desire that I have from searching out God never gets filled, nor does it ever need to be filled. It's exactly what he's saying in our piece, right? Because this is the way or inclination for eternal longing. Ariga's longing, hanitzchit, is eternal. Sheyesodahu hatzimaon ha'elohi, that is all founded and rooted in thirsting for God. Asher kol davar acher sheba'olam lo yirva oso. Nothing in the world will quench that desire. No other thing in the world will quench that desire. Ki imuvuksho levado. Only the mevakesh, the searching out itself. Hatzimaon levado. The desire itself. Shechashef tamid v'yoser v'yoser. That gets exposed, yichashef means exposed, constantly, yoser v'yoser, more and more. The yukor tamid yoser v'yoser, and that desire becomes more cultivated and more recognizable. Hu ba'atzmo hu mithapech lemakor kol oneg, and that desire becomes the catalyst for pleasure. Limchon kol ha'adanim haruchanim, in order that itself turns into and the basis of all pleasures, delicacies, hadanim, haruchanim, spiritual delight, leziv shaddai, and the splendor of God. So Rav Kook writes about himself, this paradox of the only thing that I have is this desire to come close that I know will never be filled, nor does it need to be filled. The pain of searching for God. Like Rabbi Nachman explains, everyone knows the story of the lost princess. He's just searching and searching. The viceroy is searching for the lost princess. And he goes one place and he almost sees the lost princess. And he can't. The princess is there, but it's almost invisible. He's about to get it, and then it evades, right? And then he meets these giants after many years of traveling. The giants are these giant things in life that stop us from searching for God, these hurdles, whether they're mental, emotional, whether they're physical, whether they're ideological, the things in life that impede us and stop our search, that run us down. And then the giants call upon the winds, and everything's like, no, sorry, you're not going to be able to find God. And finally, the viceroy breaks down searching for the lost prince, and he says, I know there is. I know there's a lost princess. I know that there's the Avedas Abbas Melech. And then finally one wind comes and is like, yes, there's a place, right? There's a golden, there's a castle made of pearls on top of the golden mountain, right? That's Eretz Yisrael, right? The place of the Vedas of Malk, and he's just learning and learning. He's just yearning and yearning. Tzima own, like Rav Kook says, his own life, he was thirsting for God. I saw the story that about Rav Kook that Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap brings down. And Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap, he says this amazing story about Rav Kook, that there's one time where Rav Kook went to Hartuv. Hartuv is in Nes Harim, like a 15-minute drive from here, right? He went to Hartuv, and he was there for an overnight or something like that, and he showed up at Shachris late. And Rav Kook usually didn't daven late, and he showed up at Shachris late. And Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap, the Mei Marom, he went over to the Rav, he went over to his Rebbe, and he said, what's going on? Why'd you show up late? So Rav Kook said, this morning in the inn, the Zimmer that I slept in, there was a garden, and I stopped to talk to the lady of the Zimmer about what plants get planted in this, right? It's mountainous over there in Hartov, right? As we all know, we've been hiking there, right? And he says, I wanted to know which plants grow better. Why'd you plant this? Why'd you plant that? So Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap writes, he says, and I pushed my Rav, like they talk about Rav Kook, like the tzaddik, like in such amazing terms, like Rabbi Nachman, they talk about the tzaddik, Rav Kook, and he pushed, Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap pushed Rav Kook to say, why'd you stop and do that? So Rav Kook answered, he said, I woke up this morning with such a kalsa nafsi, such a longing for God, that if I didn't stop and talk to the innkeeper, I would have been in a completely another world. So I had to stop and talk about mundane things before davening in order just to bring myself down, to draw my soul back to my body, because he had such a longing for God. Right? Isn't that unbelievable, Maisa. Okay, back inside. Now he's going to go ahead and say and talk about what's part of the remedy to this. Tzarech lihiros, tzarech lihiarot et haderech, eich nichnasim el hatraklan derech hashar. We need to go ahead and show the way, the entranceway and the pathway, how to enter through the gate. Means, how do we get from the hallway, right? The Ramchal, the Derech Traklin, right? We're put in this Vorspeis, right? It's not just a hallway, it's the Vorspeis. We want to enjoy. How do we get from point A to point B? Hashar hu elokus hamidgale ba'olam. The gate, what's this gate? That's God, that's revealed in the world. Ba'olam b'chol yafio v'hadaro. In the world in all its glory and all its splendor. B'chol ruach haneshama. In every spirit and soul. B'chol chai v'remesh. In every living thing and in every creepy crawly, every insect. B'chol tzemach. In every spurt of growth. Uveferach. In every blossoming. B'chol goy. In every nation. Umamlacha. In every kingdom. B'yam. In the ocean. V'galav. And in its waves. B'shvirei shachak. In the expanses of the firmament of the heavens. Ubehadaras ha'ma'aros. And in the glory of the planetary systems. B'kishronot shel kol siach. Embedded in every word and every conversation. B'rayanos kol sofer. And in the ideas of every author. B'dimyonos kol mishorer. And in the imagination of every poet and lyricist. Ubehegyanos kol choshev. And in the thoughts of every thinking person. Behargashat kol margish. And in the feelings of everything that you feel. Sorry, this is the next sheet over here. You can see, right? Ubesa'arat gvura shel gibor. And in the spirit of the strength of the mighty. So, Rav Kook explains. הוא לא פה עכשיו. הוא לא פה. סליחה, אני לא יודע.
אין לך איש קשר?
אין לי. אבל יש שחרית ב9. עוד מעט תהיה אנשים הגיעים. תודה. Okay, someone came, right? So Rav Kook is explaining over here that, so what's the answer over here? We need to reveal how God is in everything. God is in everything, right? He's in every world. He's in all the spirit. He's in all life, in all insects, in all planet life, in all the nations of the world, in the ocean and its waves, in the planetary, in astronomy, right? In every conversation, in all of literature, in all poetry, in all music, in the minds and hearts of everything. I thought God was only this big. God is everywhere. Oh, that's part of God? Yeah, that's also part of God, right? I thought that was separate from God. No, that's not separate from God, right? Rav Kook is saying, so what's the answer? We need to have a wide lens of Emunah, right? We look at Emunah and we look at God this big, but God is this big. As Rabbi Nachman used to say, God is grace, God is big. Ugdulaso ein cheker, right? When we limit God to only specific avenues of our life, then a person feels, right? Then we say, I'm disappointed, I can't connect to God, I have this amazing desire, right? And the pain gets exacerbated and exacerbated. Rav Kook's now beginning to answer to show that God is everywhere, right? Big, right? Take off the 300 zoom lens that we look at life and put on the 10 millimeter wide angle lens. Look bigger, look broader, have broader Emunah. When we say everything comes from God, that also comes from God, right? It's like Rabbi Nachman explains in his famous lesson, Aye Mikom Kavodo, the second chelik in Likutei Moharan, lesson 12, right? Rabbi Nachman explains, he says, I'm not going to read it inside, but he brings the Yerushalmi, that if a person asks you, Heichan Hashem Elokecha, where is your God found? You know what you say? In the Roman Parthenon. Our God is so great and so big, he's even found in places, Shemaleim, Glulim, Ve'avodah Zarah, that are filled with idol worship and idolatry, right? Gam Sham Muster Hu Yisbarach. Hashem is also there. Hashem is in literature. Hashem is all the nations of the world. Hashem is in every conversation, right? Where's God found? In Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, right? God is in your deepest pain. God is in your deepest dysfunction. God is everywhere, right? And when we narrow God, God's only in the Torah. That's kfira, right? That's what he starts with, shlila. We can't understand God, right? God is way beyond. God is everywhere. Right? And only that begins to medicate the soul. And I just want to close with this. What is Rav Kook really coming to answer here? Rav Kook is really, really responding to something. He's really, really responding. And what he's responding to is that he was saying this in his day, and it's certainly true in our day, that we have the highest souls of all time. Our souls, the souls in our generation, are mamish higher than high. And every soul, and he's writing this in his generation, which wasn't too long ago, right? That what he's seeing is the souls are yearning, right? And people are looking. I don't find this in Torah, so I'm going to put it in other avenues, right? He was in the new yeshiv, right? That denied the Torah, right? And he's explaining that these people, right? All the poets and the literature of those days, right? They were looking at the Torah, and they're like, this is what you want. God's only found there, right? And Rav Kook is responding and showing God is found everywhere, right? In all your literature, and all your conversations, and everything that you're doing, and all your desires, right? And he's responding. The answer isn't to back down, right? The answer isn't even to become more frum. The answer is look bigger, look wider, right? And I just want to read for a moment over here. We have the photocopied sheets.
Why do you have the answer if that's also constricted? We're talking about
Because
getting out of our mind. And just looking bigger, it's more of the same.
Well, it's not more the same, because what happens is that in our attempt to become sometimes more religious, so to speak, we wind up divorcing God from the picture, right? In our attempt, so what he's saying is we have to have more of an expansive view, right? When we think, right, you go biking, right? You go biking, nothing wrong with biking, but a person could say to themselves, oh, I'm going biking, it's a waste of time. Right? It's like Rav Kook famously wrote, one of his things in Orot, that he said about working out, right, is, again, this could be a whole share in its own right, but working out is considered like the tzaddikim saying Tehillim, that the working out in Eretz Yisrael, right? You say, I'm working out, what am I doing? Right? Okay, yeah, we know it's a mitzvah to be healthy, right? Or I'm driving people around, right? Say, that's not really avodas Hashem, that's not really kadosh, that's just like driving people around, right? No, he's showing that it's much wider. It's much wider. Yes, there's an inherent paradox, but the beginning is to, again, and he said we don't need to answer that paradox, but certainly widening the vision, widening the lens, widening the gap. And that helps. When we see that God is in literature, right? So it's not like, right? There's so much negativity. Everything's bad, right? Everything's bad. This is bad, and that is bad, and this is no good, and that is no good, and this is bad, and everything's bad. Right? So of course you don't want to be religious, because everything's bad. And then what does that do for chinuch? What does that do for ourselves? It creates insecurity, it creates distrust, right? You're raising generations of kids of everything's bad, nothing's good. Everything's outside the parameters of Judaism. The only thing we want is spiritual excellence. And you get worn out, right? And you're like, I can't, right? And everyone goes off the derech because they're in pain, because they can never do that. You can never, it's unattainable, right? As he's saying, right? Because everything's bad. So you're raising insecure kids, you feel insecure, you're filled with fear, you're filled with anxiety, you're filled with nervousness, because everything's bad. Rav Kook is showing, no, everything's godly. There's godly in everything. And it's precisely because you have such a high neshama that you're longing for this. I'm going to end with this. This is from Maimer Hador. Maimer Hador is another place in Rav Kook where he writes about our entire generation. I photocopied over here. I'm going to pick up in the middle. However, I put an arrow on the photocopies. If you see, this is Piska Zayin. It's the 7th stanza, called Kishador Hu Shafel, when the generation is low. And Rav Kook was writing, responding to the generation of that time. And he's writing this. Anachnu, see, I picked up by the arrow over there. Anachnu motziin chachamim na'alim. We see great chachamim, gedolei ruach, people that are great in spirit, bidorat harishonim, in the earlier generations, sha'anu mishta'im al gadlom ve'oz rucham. In early generations, we see people that were amazing, right? Gedolei ruach, chachamim na'alim, right? We had a Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we had a Moshe Rabbeinu, we had a Yeshaya Navi, right? Aval haklal, but the general people, the masses, Hu haya nasan b'shefel hamatziv. They were lowly. We had amazing gedolim, amazing tzaddikim, right? Like in the times of the Baal Shem Tov. But the mass, the hamonam, they were lowly. Bein b'das, bein b'musar, both in mind and in morality. Emes kinala mikol hamon haya hamon amenu mitzad hakadusha helokis hachofefet alav v'yihi lenes. Emes kinala mikol hamon haya hamon amenu mitzad kedusha elim achofefes alav v'yihi lenes. It's true that they were, even the hamonam had a certain level of kedusha that surrounded them and that elevated them. But bedoros ha'achronim hitchilu hanakim hitmayet v'aklal holech u'metaleh. But in later generations, in the generations that we live in, the giants began to dwindle, v'aklal hu holech u'metaleh, and the regular am starts to go up. Meaning to say, right, the scholarship and the great kedusha, the amazing people went down, but the hamonam began to raise. Right? And he goes on to explain how in the later generations, the longing and the tzimayon of the hamonam became greater and greater and greater and greater, precisely because we're living at a later time, precisely because our neshamos that come down experience the most pain and experience the most longing. So let us have the wide level of Emunah, the wide lens of Emunah, to see God in everything that we're doing.
Amen.
Okay.
Ja, schön. Oh ja.